So they wanted me to do, my colleague Susan Calgi did this thing called, for Craftsy. I don't know if you've probably seen Craftsy online. Yeah, she did this thing on the couture dress. So they wanted me to do something like that, and I said, okay, I don't want to do a direct lift because that's not fair. So they gave me a dress pattern, and I said, okay, I will figure out something to do on that dress pattern. And one of the things I chose, they gave me a range of choices, and one of the things I chose was something with intersecting seams, because it's something that I wanted to figure out, because when you're sewing an intersecting seam, getting everything to match at a point is a challenge. And if it doesn't, if you miss it a little bit, it just looks like an amateur job. So I figured this one out, and then when I was teaching at FIT, we do the second semester, we make the notch lapel jacket, but as a ready-to-wear version. And so I teach them this technique as the way to make that match. So I think that's going to help you get that collar on. Okay, so we're sewing 2 seams first. And so for you, the 2 seams that you would be sewing first are the neck seam, collar to body, neck seam, collar to facing.
Okay.
Okay? And so these 2, and this is where marking, you want to know exactly where this intersects. And so my teacher Simone was very big on marking too. She would I remember the first day that I brought my homework in, it was like second day of class, I was so proud. I made my pattern, I had the seam allowances marked on it, and holy cow, she went into a blind rage and called me an amateur, and you just don't know what you're doing and all of this. And I just, then she explained about marking stitching lines and all of that. She introduced me to the dual tracing wheel. You're familiar with the dual tracing wheel?
Tracing wheel, right?
Dual tracing wheel.
Yeah, I was wondering why.
Yes.
Why is
okay,
it?
this is because you see, in the couture, you don't make the cutting pattern. The draft is the cutting pattern. So what you do.
So you make your seam allowance for that? Like.
Yeah.
Okay.
One drafts the stitching line. One drafts the cutting line.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
That's lovely.
I've worn out several of these in my day. So yeah, she explained to me about all of that, and I never forgot it. Okay, so now we're going to come to the machine.
Okay.
And we're going to sew down to that intersection. Stop on the intersection. Back tack. About a quarter of an inch or so. See, the back tack is important here in that it's going to form a thread loop, and that will become important in the next step. Press the seam open. So the next step is, and I generally use the same thread that's in the machine. That way, if you don't get it all out, it's not going to show. So come over here, get a needle and thread, and anchor the thread here. And so what you want to do is you're going to catch that thread loop with the needle. And then you're going to catch, right sides together, this thread loop.
Okay.
You with me? And then come on, there we are. Okay. And then you will sew that thread loop to itself. Sew these two thread loops together.
Yeah.
Just the thread, not the fabric itself.
Okay.
So you're sewing the ends of the rows of stitches to each other, so they can't possibly shift. Okay, and then what you'll do is push all your seam allowances one way.
Okay.
And then you're going to pin baste these two stitching lines, one on top of the other. Come over to the machine and shorten the stitches down to 0.5, very short stitch.
Okay.
This, if you don't want to back tack, but you want to secure the stitches, very short stitch at the
Okay.
beginning or end will do just that.
Okay.
So then we're going to come here and we're going to put the needle down right on the end of the row of stitching,
Okay.
dead on the end of the row.
Okay.
Okay? And then sew away. Come on. Okay. She's misbehaving today. Come on. Okay, let's try that again. See, the beauty of this is you don't have to worry about your machine misbehaving because you have sewn
Already.
those two rows together.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of trying this again. Very short stitches for about 1/4 of an inch or so, and back to the standard length. You can see here, it starts right at that stitch. And then we flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. Finally, press. In your case, you would trim the little corners out. You would trim all this excess out. But here, press, open.
Oh, you don't sew all the way up.
No.
Okay. Only to the corner.
Yeah. And then finally, to figure out what to do with these little corners, I like to just do a little kind of origami thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that will make it so that if you need to adjust this seam later, you have the fabric. If you get in there and start cutting that fabric out to reduce the bulk, which is, you know, technically correct, you can't go in there later if you need to let a garment out. And so in the couture, one of the things about having a wider seam allowance is so that, you know, if in the fitting process they pick up some weight, you have some insurance.
Okay.
Because I have had that happen. So then it matches dead on.
Beautiful. Perfect.
So that the variation of that is going to be what you're going to be using for the lapel. So the first two, and you'll sew from the center to these points
Yeah.
and back tack